Hello and welcome to Gameonysus Weekly, your one-stop shop for video game news, keeping up with the biggest stories so you don't have to. I'm your host, Janet Garcia, and today we're talking about Bobby Kotick's pay cut, a new Marvel game, and what Oculus Quest looks like with the meta. All these stories and so much more on today's episode. Starting with Activision Blizzard CEO details more changes, pay cut to address workplace problems. This comes over from Megan Farok-Ramesh at Axios, who writes, Activision Blizzard is adopting new policies around harassment and aggressively cutting the salary of its CEO, Bobby Kotick, to California's minimum wage as part of continued attempts to correct the company's toxic behavior. Driving the news. In a post today, Kotick called the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission's investigation of the company a catalyst for change. Activision Blizzard is enacting a new zero-tolerance policy across the company. In the past, when we discovered and substantiated harassment, we terminated some employees and provided verbal or written warnings or different disciplinary actions to others. That approach is inadequate, Kotick said, and the company aims to have the strictest harassment and non-retaliation policies of any employer. Employees who retaliate against anyone for making a compliance claim will be fired immediately. The company will rely on termination rather than written warnings or misconduct. That approach is inadequate, Kotick said, and the company aims to have the strictest harassment and non-retaliation policies of any employer. Employees who retaliate against anyone for making a compliance claim will be fired immediately. The company will rely on termination rather than written warnings for misconduct or harassment based on any legally protected category. Termination for these reasons will result in the immediate forfeiture of future compensation. Activision Blizzard has also announced it will waive forced arbitration for harassment and discrimination, a win for employees who walked out in protest earlier this year. The big picture. Activision Blizzard's plan to course correct are its most aggressive yet, months after employees formed a collective called ABK Alliance and was slapped with several lawsuits over bombshell reports that it had enabled a sexist and racist culture. The company says it will increase the number of women and non-binary people in its employ to 50% within the next 5 years and hopefully faster. The company is investing $250 million to accelerate opportunities for diverse talent, as well as an additional $250 million over the next 10 years on initiatives to foster expanded opportunities in gaming and technology for underrepresented communities. It will also begin releasing annual salary transparency reports. Kotick said he is asking the board to approve a pay cut to the lowest amount California law will allow for people earning a salary, $62,500, down from $875,000. Most of Kotick's compensation comes from bonuses and stock, which he says he is asking the board to forgo until we have achieved the transformational gender-related goals and other commitments described above. Kotick made $30 million in 2019 and $155 million in cash and stock for 2020. The latter marked him as the highest. Kotick made $30 million in 2019 and $155 million in cash and stock for 2020. The latter marked him as second highest CEO of an S&P 500 company. What's next? This is the second swath of corrective measures announced by the company, and the second announced before the company's quarterly earnings were due to be reported. In Q3, results will be announced on November 2nd when Kotick and his leadership team will take calls from stock analysts. Normally, that'd simply lead into next Friday's release of this year's big Call of Duty, but Activision remains embroiled in lawsuits over its workplace issues. It's been attempting to settle with the EEOC, not yet, while it tried unsuccessfully to pause a related lawsuit by the state of California. And again, there's a lot of work to be done, and obviously I'm from the outside looking in. I'm not at this company. I'm not involved firsthand, but this feels like some really good positive steps. As Farok-Ramesh pointed out, this being the most aggressive course correction for them, I think that's an important thing to highlight as it's sort of starting to kind of move things a bit forward. And I like that how tangible many of the things are, where there's deadlines set, there's money being invested in these things. The end of forced arbitration is a huge win. And as far as the pay cut, which is sort of how a lot of outlets couched this or talked about this, and there's definitely that conversation around the fact that Kotick taking a pay cut like that, he's still very rich. He doesn't actually even need money like that, in the same way that most people do, and you're still, even with this, making money. It's really more to me of a show of good faith, where it's like, hey, I'm going to do what I can to sort of, whether it's for the right reasons or not, take the conversation off of, well, you know, what's your attachment here? Like, you're making all this money. I can't believe you're making all this money while there are so many problems at your company. So it's sort of being like, hey, okay, I'm going to relinquish all that I can in that regard to try to show my commitment. I think that's more of what this is, rather than a, you know, oh, Kotick's now financially suffering as a result of the situation. Like, that's not going to be the case because he has like so much money. But more so, like I said, I think it's a sign of good faith a little bit. So yeah, you know, hopefully we see more things come out of this, and this is the beginning of many changes. And I think the goal of being sort of the best and strictest when it comes to this stuff is a solid one to have, and we'll see if they're able to execute and actually achieve that goal in the near future, and what those earnings calls and stuff will end up looking like as they continue having these issues with their company while also putting out these really big releases. Shifting gears, we have another new Marvel game. And this one will be coming from Skydance New Media, which is joining forces with Marvel Entertainment, which most notably has Amy Hennig at the helm. The press release reads, Skydance New Media, the new interactive division of Skydance Media, helmed by award-winning writer and director Amy Hennig, announced today a partnership with Marvel Entertainment to develop a narrative-driven blockbuster action-adventure game featuring a completely original story and take on the Marvel Universe. This marks the first initiative from the new AAA studio, which was formed by Hennig and Electronic Arts veteran Julian Beek to pioneer a new category of story-focused interactive entertainment, a groundbreaking convergence of games, film, and television. And perhaps most known for her work on Uncharted, Hennig is also known for being the creative director of Star Wars. And perhaps most known for her work on Uncharted, Hennig has also done stuff like Legacy of Kain and Soul Reaver, as well as Jak and Daxter. So the back of Hennig's baseball card is pretty impressive. Definitely one of the more notable people in the industry. And by that, I mean, her work has sort of, like, that's one of the names that, like, people know about if you do know offhand, like, directors and writers and folks like that in the game industry. Like, Hennig definitely has made a huge name for herself in this space, and rightfully so, as she's worked on a lot of really incredible games that are most known for their story and that aspect of the adventure. So I am cautiously optimistic that this will be a fun project. I definitely lean more into the single player stuff, the stuff that has a good story. Like, all the things I'm hearing, all of the buzzwords, the action adventure, the original story, you know, looking at like the different angles of humanity, like that all appeals to me. And the Marvel element appeals to me as well. So I'm excited to see what they come up with. There's been a lot of Marvel games in recent years, of varying genres and angles and IP within the Marvel universe. So I'm just excited to hear more about it. And I think the number one thing that I'm wondering, and a lot of people I'm sure are wondering, is what is going to be the subsect IP. We know it's Marvel, but like, whose story are we going to be hearing about, and what's that going to play out to be? And then obviously, you know, from there, more details on gameplay and scope and all that good stuff. So hopefully we hear more about this somewhat soon. It'll be an exciting one to look out for in upcoming more generalized showcases or even specific stages for platforms. So we'll see when we find out more about what this is, but I'm excited to see what Skydance's approach is to Marvel. And speaking of new games, this is going to be a Quiet Place video game. Stated in a press release from Saber Interactive and Elogica announced development of A Quiet Place, a new video game based on Paramount Pictures' blockbuster film franchise. It's going to be a single-player, story-driven horror-adventure video game based on the film franchise. This first official video game set in the terrifying A Quiet Place universe will deliver an original story and gameplay that captures the compelling suspense, emotion, and drama for which the series is famous. The game is in development by Elogica, the Montreal-based studio with veteran talent from Rainbow Six and Far Cry franchises, and published by Saber Interactive, the Embracer Group company behind the hit game World War Z and the upcoming Evil Dead the game. As far as excitement from this, I'm a little bit less drawn to the IPs that they're sort of throwing around for background, with Far Cry probably being the one that I like the most of the ones listed. But even that's kind of like, it's fine, you know, not my favorite thing in the world, but a pretty solid experience. Obviously, with this being like horror adventure, I do think that it probably would have stealth incorporated in it. I'd be hard pressed to imagine a game taking place in that universe where it's all about being quiet and not making noise and trying to get around places where you wouldn't have some element of that. The World War Z mention, it does obviously, remind us of multiplayer stuff, but it is said that it's going to be a single player story driven campaign. So yeah, I imagine it'd just be following a different family or group of people that are experiencing the world in the same way that we've seen played out in the films. But this is all we know for now. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it works out. Definitely translating movies to games and games to movies can be a little bit dicey. So we'll see if they can pull this off and make it something really cool. And the last big game reveal of the week, the end of the Dark Pictures anthology, at least season 1, has been announced and is called The Devil in Me. And this is pretty interesting. They released the trailer officially on their YouTube channel. And one thing that sort of surprised me is that we now know the Dark Pictures anthology is broken up into seasons. So this is the end of season 1. But from the original announcement of the series, it's meant to be an 8-game series. So I'm guessing that it'll just be 2 seasons since we've currently had 3 games. This would be the 4th. So maybe they're splitting it directly in half. And the trailer essentially is showing off, this guy is sort of talking about the artistry of murder. So it's maybe this kind of like murder house situation where maybe someone's taking apart different pieces of people and then creating like this ultimate monster. It sort of seems like that's kind of what's going on here. And throughout the trailer, you also see different glimpses of characters that we've seen throughout the anthology so far. So it does kind of imply that there's going to be a connective thread that's kind of tying all of these stories together, which I could kind of take or leave. I feel like I would have been fine just having them be complete one-offs, but I kind of get the temptation to make it have like a more unified meaning or conversation, but it just depends on how they pull it off. If it's a good game, I'm good either way. For me, though, I will say I finally started playing House of Ashes with my brother. We started yesterday on my stream. You can check out that VOD on twitch.tv/Gameonysus. And we were not into House of Ashes. It was not interesting. I was not having fun. Quality-wise, it's around the same as all the other games. So take that for whatever you will, based on your experiences with those other games. Very much in the okay realm, sometimes mediocre. With some moments of good is kind of how I describe the Dark Pictures anthology. But I really enjoy those games because I really like choice-driven stuff and I like spooky stuff that isn't too scary. But yeah, House of Ashes is just, it is not hitting right now. We're about halfway through. We'll see how it turns out. I will definitely be playing The Devil in Me because I'm just invested in this anthology and the work from this team. So hopefully that one kind of hits a little bit more of those horror notes, because so far House of Ashes is a lot less scary than I thought it would be, and I'm kind of disappointed by that. But yeah, The Devil in Me, that has been officially unveiled, and we'll see when it comes out. And it really is press release week because we have another business sentiment where PUBG's parent company acquires Subnautica studio. And by Subnautica studio, I mean the studio behind Subnautica. Here's what the press release reads as: Krafton Inc. to acquire Unknown Worlds, the developers behind Subnautica and Natural Selection. Krafton affirms its commitment to driving the future of content development by adding industry visionaries to its collective of independent video game development studios. Known for its hit global title PUBG Battlegrounds, the upcoming AAA title, The Callisto Protocol, today announced its decision to acquire the creators of Subnautica, Unknown Worlds. And they go on to talk about like, yeah, they're so great, it's amazing, great acquisition for the portfolio, etc., etc. And then they have the line, Krafton will spare no effort in helping them. Not only do they enhance our development capabilities, but we share a goal of creating unique experiences for global audiences. Subnautica and PUBG both started humbly and evolved successfully through constant iteration and feedback. We want to bring new games to the world stage, and with Krafton, we're a big step closer. We're truly looking forward to our future together, and this was said by Charlie Cleveland, who is the CEO of Unknown Worlds, talking about the similarities between Subnautica and PUBG, 2 games that I would probably never really compare, as they're both starkly different, but I think the mention of them sharing the iterative nature of development is worth noting and a cool kind of through line to bring up. Personally, this acquisition doesn't do a lot for me. I haven't really spent super significant time with Subnautica or PUBG, but as usual with these things, I just hope that it is a good deal for the studio being acquired, and that it helps foster, more of their work and makes their work easier or even better in some cases. So all the best wishes for them in that collaboration. And I'm excited to see maybe what's coming up from this team, because I feel like a lot of times with these, well, everyone's kind of always working on everything all the time, right? But with these acquisitions, I'm sure part of that conversation could have been those future projects. So I'm excited to see what comes next from that team. In yet another crossover where stuff in the real world and general universe crosses over with video games and how they kind of can be in conversation with the two, Facebook is undergoing a rebrand where they are now called Meta. That is the new name of the company, and it is a parent company that is embodying, or not embodying, but over things like Facebook, Instagram, and the other businesses that are owned from that company, which is now called Meta. So with that, Facebook loosens then its controversial VR login restriction, but it's not quite as exciting as it may sound. For this, I'm pulling from Stephen Totillo over at Axios, who starts by reminding us that a mid-2020 mandate that Oculus VR users enter a Facebook login to operate the device infuriated some longtime Oculus users who wanted nothing to do with the controversial social network. We are going to move away from requiring a Facebook login for Meta Quest in the future, the company's vice president of Reality Labs, Andrew Bosworth, said. Bosworth was using the company's new name for the VR device, formerly known as Oculus Quest, as it phases out the Oculus branding in favor of Facebook's new name. While Quest users won't need a Facebook login, they will need an account tied to Mark Zuckerberg's overall company, not, say, a Gmail account. It won't be third-party credentials, Bosworth said. It just won't be Facebook credentials. Facebook bought Oculus for $2 billion in 2014. It let people log into the headset with an Oculus account until last year's change. So that kind of sucks. Yeah, I feel like that's almost in a way worse, because at least I already had the Facebook account. I guess the only benefit here is you could maybe delete your Facebook and have like a generalized Meta account or something, but that also sounds a little bit like a hellscape, being tied into just one thing when you want maybe just some of the things. And yeah, I just hate that there's no way to just make a regular Oculus account. I think it's totally ridiculous, and it is by far the worst thing about Oculus Quest. It's probably the only bad thing about Oculus Quest. I have an Oculus Quest. If you're watching the video version, you can actually see my Quest a little bit in this corner in one of my little shelf cubbies. But yeah, not a fan of things. And again, it all comes back to the same stuff, right? It kind of is like, if you've ever watched those documentaries that talk about how we as consumers have the illusion of choice a lot of times, where you go into a grocery store and you think you have all these options, but really Coca-Cola and a few other select companies, just to name a random example, own the majority of the choice you're seeing. So really it's the illusion of choice, because you're still buying products from the same main company. And I feel like that, in a weird way, I know a lot of people have given Facebook and Zuckerberg a lot of flack for the name Meta, and it is kind of ridiculous in a lot of ways. But at the same time, I do feel like it speaks to the dominance that they have and the way that we're all going to just be zooped into it. And I don't know, maybe that's kind of dramatic, but I just wanted to point out what's tied Oculus Quest is. I would love to see the day where they just are totally separated, but I don't know that it'll happen. And it really sucks because, again, Oculus Quest is like, I would say, my favorite VR platform on the market right now by like a mile. So I don't know. I'm just hoping PSVR 2 is really good. Not that I would ever necessarily give away my Oculus Quest or give up my Quest because of this, but it is definitely a frustrating circumstance to have to be tied into this for no reason other than the fact that they own it and they said that you have to. And lastly, for our main stories, I just want to give a quick PSA that these two things are out, or these two features are out. One of them is that the Nintendo Switch expansion pack is now out and available. So if you're interested in purchasing that, you can go ahead and play those N64 games and those Sega games. So far, as far as issues, like known issues that have come up, random little like glitches and bugs, and some issues with not being able to remap the buttons, classic Nintendo, right? So maybe take a quick look at different articles and complaints that have appeared online if that's something that you're concerned about, that might make you hesitant to buy, like you were looking to get into it, but not looking enough that you already did it. If you're kind of on the fence, I would just check out that information that's out there. And a reminder that you can also get the Animal Crossing DLC through having this expansion pack basically it's all bundled in together. And then the other PSA is that the PS5 is now having Apple Music. So they have Spotify already as an app that's been there for a long time, maybe even since launch actually, but they finally got Apple Music there as an option. So if you're an Apple Music user and you've been just not being able to play your music off your console and it's something you want to do, I have good news for you. You are now able to do that. I didn't use this feature for a long time. The whole like music integration with gameplay thing, but I've started using it a lot more regularly now, and I really like it, honestly. It's just cool to be able to have sound all coming out of one source. I'm someone that has always listened to music in the background of playing games, like since I was growing up. I don't do that quite as much now because a lot of my gaming is made for a review where I do want to be able to hear the OST for like critical purposes, or for streaming where you can't stream music because it's licensed. But whenever I do have a chance to do that, I enjoy taking advantage of that feature. So hopefully now Apple Music users can enjoy that too. And now for game event recaps, let's talk about Sony's State of Play. And a reminder that this was a 20-minute presentation that had a third-party focus. We got a gameplay look at Deathverse, which is a sequel to Let It Die, which was a survival action game that began service in 2016. And in this, you play as a contestant in a survival reality game show. We got a very fourth wall breaking trailer for OFK, or for We Are OFK is the name of the game. And this is a game that has been shown off before. It is a narrative based game. It's going to be across 5 episodes. So it's going to be a 5-episode series that's coming out in 2022. And it's all about the music and the band and all of that stuff. It has a really nice, striking art style, and this is one I'm genuinely really excited for. And a bit of a surprise to me, Bugsnax is getting a free update called the Isle of Bugsnax. In this, you're going to get new and giant Bugsnax. The Bugsnax will also be able to have hats on them, which is just objectively adorable, I feel like. And then you can also do other things like decorate your own hut and village as well, or your hut in the village, rather. And this will be coming out later in 2022, and it will be free. Now, if you actually finished Bugsnax, you might be wondering, like, well, how does this tie into, like, the end of the game? It looks like it doesn't really. I'm guessing they just drop you into the village, and you can kind of just continue your playthrough there, is what I would assume, but it wasn't really super made clear. Oh, and then also, at first they said there weren't going to be trophies, but then they backpedaled on that, and they said that there will be trophies, so keep an eye out for what that all entails as they give more info on what trophies to expect. And this has also been shown off before, but we have Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach getting highlighted, and it now officially also has its release date, because I'm not sure if it had its release date before, but it's coming out December 16th, so just around the corner. And unlike other games in the series where those are very much like you're isolated to a singular space and sort of managing cameras and things, you can freely walk around and explore, and you're still trying to survive the night and escape, essentially. And previously an Xbox exclusive, Death's Door is now coming to PlayStation, and it'll be here on November 23rd. So that's also coming up really closely. And I'm really excited for this one to show up just because it's a really great game, and I think it's going to do awesome on PlayStation. And it'll be a fun one to platinum if you're into that kind of thing. We got to look at Kart Rider Drift, which is like a cute kart racing game. That's going to be coming out in 2022, and it'll be free to play. Not much else to say about this one. It has like some of the classic trappings of a kart racer with like power-ups and abilities and things. We got another trailer for King of Fighters 14, and also an announcement of the beta along with the dates for the beta tests that are happening on PS4 and PS5. With the betas happening November 19th through November 20th, varying days, so check those out to see if you want to take part in that beta. We got to look at First Class Trouble, which is an online social deduction game. Apparently it's already out on Steam, at least via early access, which I believe most recent reviews are mostly positive, but its overall reviews are mixed, so that might just be a result of them making changes over time, or, I'm not really sure what to make of that, to be honest, but we'll see how it is when it actually comes out. And it's going to be available as a PlayStation Plus game, so that makes it available on November 2nd. And I'm curious about this one. It looks like it'd be kind of fun. It feels like it's a little bit giving me Operation Tango and Hitman vibes, like those sort of mashed up together. We'll see if it's actually fun to play. And then we got the star of the show, what I would consider to be the star of the show, just generally speaking, a new Star Ocean game. That's Star Ocean: The Divine Force, coming in 2022. And this IP is really meaningful to a lot of people. It doesn't do anything for me, but a lot of people that are fans of Star Ocean were really excited about this. And I do think this is probably like the most hard-hitting in terms of like IP notoriety or notability title that they showed off. And lastly, they closed out with a more in-depth look at Little Devil Inside. And yet, despite this look, I'm not really sure what to make of this. This is an upcoming indie title, and in this, we got to see traversal of some of the overall like map that you're kind of navigating, where you see your character like go on a train, and then it kind of changes like the perspective of everything. It's very doll-like, very storybook-like. We saw a little bit of what it looks like when you actually get on the ground and you're walking up to, you know, NPCs. And that was everything that was shown off in the PlayStation State of Play. Definitely one of the weaker State of Plays that we've gotten, and State of Play already is not terribly exciting. So I was a little bit disappointed by this one. I had done my classic bingo card prediction stuff, and I only got like one square other than the free space. Part of that was stuff that I felt like I should have known, like Five Nights at Freddy's being shown off, and like a port, you know, a port of a game that wasn't available on PlayStation coming to PlayStation for the first time. Like, I should have guessed those things. But other than that, it just felt like everything that people were looking forward to, there was kind of very little of. And yeah, that was a little bit disappointing. And there was also like not much in the way of surprises either. I had posted in my chat, I always post like, what letter grade do you give things? And this was the lowest my chat had scored a presentation in I think ever since I started doing these live reactions this year. So yeah, I think that is a little bit of a testament to what the general kind of impressions were of this one. But you know, someone's got to be like the weakest of all of them. So for this to be like the weakest State of Play, I mean, still got a few things that were cool. My personal star of the show is, I would say, Death's Door, because I think that's going to be a really fun game for being available on PlayStation. It's also on Switch as well. So I'm just excited for more people to play it, because I really love that game a lot, and it is still in my top 10 of the year. So yeah. Now let's talk game releases and updates. Pikmin Bloom is out now, available for download in US, Canada, and the rest of the Americas. It is Niantic's take on Pikmin, so it is kind of a bit in that Pokemon Go vein where you're walking to do the gameplay, and that's the primary gameplay. I really don't know too much more about it. I did take note of it when it first got announced, but I haven't really checked in yet, and I have yet to play it. So stay tuned for maybe my thoughts on that if I end up... I mean, I guess I'll download it, right? What's the harm? So check that out if that's something that you are interested in. Returnal gets an update that adds photo mode and the ability to suspend your run, meaning that you can actually pause and close the software essentially and get back into the game. Now there is limitations to this, like you can't really use it to like safe scum your way through things, but you can suspend the cycle and turn it off and safely exit the game, which is something that a lot of people had been asking for, again, because the runs can be quite long, anywhere from like 45 minutes to like potentially longer. So if that's something that has been keeping you from wanting to play Returnal, that is no longer a reason. So go check it out if that was the thing that you had been waiting and hoping for, as I think for many people it really was. So that will be a nice update for folks to be able to take advantage of. And lastly, Monster Hunter Rise adds more black hairstyles to the game, adding 3 specifically that are now available as free DLC on the Nintendo eShop. And finally, we're moving on to the For the Free section. You can now download a demo of Metroid Dread. Reported on by Jared Moore over at IGN, Resident Evil Village set to receive free DLC, which was revealed via their annual integrated report. And we had heard earlier, like during E3, that it was confirmed that there will be DLC, but now we know that it will be free DLC. No release date yet, but stay tuned for that one. Reported on by Stephanie Newlenny over at VG247. Rise of Tomb Raider will be free on PC for Prime members starting next week, so be sure to check that out. And lastly, we've got Xbox Games with Gold. And we have our Xbox Games with Gold for this month. Moving Out is available April 1st to the 30th. Kingdom 2 Crowns available the 16th to the December 15th. Rocket Knight available November 1st to the 15th. And Lego Batman 2 DC Superheroes available the 16th to the 30th. And for PS Plus, we got Knockout City, First Class Trouble, and Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning. It's really great that Knockout City is finally on PS Plus, because I think the price point was a barrier to entry for a lot of people, just because of the nature of it being an ongoing like multiplayer game. A lot of people sort of saw this game and expected it to be free to play, and sort of were so disappointed that it wasn't. That I think a lot of folks just didn't get it for that reason. So having it on PS Plus, it removes that barrier entirely for any members, and I think it's gonna like really increase the player base and increase the success of the game, which is already, I think, is doing pretty well for itself. In the First Class Trouble we already talked about from the showcase, and again, this is a great example of a game that I probably wouldn't play if it wasn't on PS Plus, but that could end up being good. So hopefully those end up being fun times. And those are all the stories we have for this week. Thank you so much for watching over on youtube.com/Gameonysus and listening on podcast services. And as always, a big thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. You too can join over on patreon.com/Gameonysus. We have rewards as low as the $1 all the way up to the $25 tier. Also, earlier in the show, I mentioned my top 10 games of the year. I actually did update my list. I have a running series of lists over at my website, pen2pixels.com. So head over there and check out the newest article that I have, which is my updated top 10 list. And this is the third list I've done. The last one is going to drop in December, my finalized list, and I am very excited to see what ends up making the final cut. And hopefully I'll have some time to play some other games along the way that I have missed in preparation for that end of the year. And of course, I'll link that in the description as well. So again, thanks for watching and listening. And as always, I will see you here next time. Bye.